let's learn a little bit about Linux. First, I'm going to connect to my personal cloud machine. It'll ask for my password, which I'm going to type, and I'm not going to see it. So if you mess up, you basically have to kind of backspace the entire thing and start over. And that $ means I'm now connected to my Linux machine. The $ actually represents that we're in what we call a shell. A shell is like the program that listens for your typing and responds to your commands. And probably one of the first commands you're going to want to know is how to get out of your cloud machine, and that would be exit. So I've closed my connection to the cloud machine. Now I'm going to get back in. The way I'm getting in is specific to a Mac. Windows would be using the PuTTY program, but either way, once you get through your password into the shell, you are on a Linux machine in either case. You may notice that before I had a %sign. That's where I typed SSH. That's because I was using a shell on my Mac computer also. So a Mac is similar to Linux because they're both from the same kind of heritage. They're both Unix systems. So Windows is a completely different kind of thing, but Linux and Mac share a common ancestry. And on a Mac, if you want to have something that looks like Linux, you can open the terminal and get into a shell. Windows has this too. Windows has PowerShell, and Windows actually now has Linux inside of it if you choose to get that application. So Linux is pretty much everywhere. And this cloud machine, which is provided by Amazon, I don't know where in the world it is, somewhere in the east part of the US, is a Linux machine. And they have hundreds of thousands of these things that people purchase by the hour. Now, some basic Linux commands that you're going to want to know. First of all, everything is through this text display. You can install Linux on your desktop, and you can have it could look like a Mac or Windows machine. But when we're using cloud machines, we're typically using this kind of shell, this text interface. And we're going to be doing that pretty much the whole time in this camp because it's a very important skill. Cloud machines are extremely common, and a lot of the software development you might be doing later would be through a cloud machine, so it's good to know. So some basic commands for a shell. ls lists your files, stands for list. I have no files, so it shows nothing. pwd, print working directory. This is my current location. So everything you do is from a current location. We can make a directory for ourselves, which you might call a folder, with make directory. So we'll say make directory like example 1. Now ls shows example 1. It's in blue because it's a directory. I can change into that directory with cd, change directory, and now you see that I am in that directory. So if I were to make a file, this new file would be in this directory or this folder. This is how you organize things. You can make a bunch of directories inside of each other, really deep nested, but it's important to kind of organize your files this way. So we're going to use a program called Nano to create files and look at files. So we're going to say nano, and then I'll just say like notes.txt, make a text file. So nano is what you would use instead of like Microsoft Word or Notepad or something like that. This is kind of, old school. Like this is way back 70s, 80s, I'm not sure. This kind of text interface is from that era. And it may sound super out of date, but it's very efficient because you don't have to have all the graphics. And that's why we do it on cloud machines, because it's more efficient. And most cloud machines, nobody's ever going to connect to it with a screen anyway. There's, like I said, hundreds of thousands of these, or millions. And they're not connected to any screens. So there's really no reason to have the whole graphical environment. So Nano is very simple program to type text. You don't get fonts, you don't get, you can't center things, you can't do all the normal stuff you'd see in Microsoft Word. You just type text. So here are some notes about Linux. we have ls equals list files, make directory equals make directory. What else? cd is change directory. pwd is print working directory. In other words, where are you currently? If you were to create a file, where would it be? Exit is to quit Linux or a really close connection. Linux is still running. You just close the connection. And nano, edit files. And in nano commands, see, nano itself has its own commands, so you have to know what you're doing here. You see them at the bottom of the screen. They have a little caret sign, like caret X, caret O. That means control. So you got to hold down the control key, and you say like control X or control O. Those are pretty much the only ones we're going to use. So control O is save file, and control X is quit. So if I want to save this file, which I'm not done yet, and you can see at the top right it says modified. So I don't want to just I don't want to close my terminal, for example, because then I might lose this. I'll hit Control O, and you see at the bottom it says, what name do you want to use for the file? And if you like the name that you've already established, you can just press enter. And it says at the bottom that it saved it. And then to quit, Control X. Now if I type ls, there are my notes. If I want to go back to my home directory, the one I started in, I can go up a directory, and you see there's my folder example1. So let's add that one note to my notes, how to go up a directory. Let's go back into here. There's my file. Open it. Come down here. Just use the arrow keys. Actually come up here. cd ... equals change directory to parent. Go up. Save. Quit. There are my notes again. One last thing I guess I'll show you. Go back in here. What we often do also is a command called cat show contents of a file without using nano. So if you want to just look at the contents of the file, you want to open nano, you can use cat. And so for example, cat notes.txt, that's the contents of the file. All right, that is the quick summary of Linux. As we start using Python, there are just a couple commands related to Python. And as we start learning more about how security works, you're going to find there are more commands in Linux that we use specifically for security purposes.